One of the most positive experiences I ever had as an atheist was back in 2012 at the first Reason rally. I was born and raised and continued to live in an area where religious faith, almost always in the form of some flavor or another of Christianity, is taken for granted. Being an atheist surrounded by religious folks, many of whom are quite outspoken about their faith, can be an alienating experience. So when I found myself standing on the National Mall in 2012, God, look at my fat, bare baby face.
So, Steve's released a video titled Secular Social Justice, Why It Matters. And in this video he lectures us all about how terrible we are, how the social justice warrior left aren't calling out the bigots in the atheist community enough. And I've added the music because when Steve starts lecturing people, you really need some sad music to go with it, as he is, dramatic to say the least. This video might be a bit long because I want to get through the entire video, as Steve, you have no right to be lecturing anyone, and please stop saying you're seeking justice. You are definitely not seeking justice.
Anyway, when I found myself standing there surrounded by thousands of other people who shared my lack of religious faith, it left an impression. I wasn't alone. I wasn't isolated. I was part of a community, a growing, energetic, enthusiastic community. I've long believed that a crucial step in leading a happy and fulfilling life is finding your people. That day at the Reason Rally in 2012, I felt as though I had found my people. It didn't turn.
I guess that's the problem with the atheist community, Steve. The sole reason why you're in this community is because you don't believe in God. The rest of your political beliefs are up to you. So if you want some collective atheist movement that just all believes exactly the same things politically, it's never going to happen. You're expecting too much from a group of people that are only tied together through the fact that they don't believe in God.
Out to be true, but still, nice memory. Since the rise of the new atheists, personified most prominently by Richard Dawkins, Christopher Hitchens, Daniel Dennett, and Sam Harris, the so-called Four Horsemen, the organized atheist movement has become as closely associated with bigotry and sexual misconduct as with reason and enlightenment. It's a shame, but the real shame of it is that such associations are completely justified. Atheist spaces, both in real life and online, have been dominated by cis-hetero white men for as long as I've been an active participant.
I'm guessing the reason why that is, Steve, is because atheists are mostly populated in white countries. I'm sorry to say. I don't think the Middle East has too many atheists since they kill them. Just to let you know. And who cares if they're white, Steve? Does them being white stop them from not believing in God? I don't understand. You're such a racist, mate. If I was going to do a video like this, I would do it on your group, as you are the ones that are bringing race and sex into this, where it doesn't need to be whatsoever.
And efforts by women, people of color, LGBTQ people, and members of other marginalized groups to push back against that domination have always been met with responses ranging from indifference to outright hostility. That reluctance to embrace and prioritize the task of making atheist spaces more inclusive would be bad enough were it not present alongside a stubborn tolerance of sexual misconduct. Numerous prominent atheist men, most notably Richard Carrier and Skeptic magazine founder Michael Shermer, have been credibly accused of committing acts of sexual harassment and abuse and made to face little to no professional consequences as a result. They still publish books, they still appear in high-profile speaking slots at conferences, and they are still zealously defended from such accusations by their devoted admirers. Given these conditions, it's no wonder that many activists who might otherwise wish to work within the movement have chosen instead to distance themselves from organized atheism.
The problem is, Steve, the changes that the atheist community would have to make to attract these social justice warrior activists would drive away the people in the group. They'd just form another group away from the social justice warrior activists. Or drive them out, as Gamergate has tried to do. We don't want you guys here, Steve. I don't understand how being black has anything to do with not believing in God, or being a woman. It makes no sense. Why do you guys always have to infect everything you join?
For those of us who still cling to the naive hope that organized atheism can still be salvaged and put to some good productive use, one of the greatest challenges we face is convincing our fellow atheists that there's even a problem. Oh, it's not that difficult to get someone to acknowledge the existence of, say, misogyny or racism or xenophobia within atheist circles, but that acknowledgement is almost always swiftly followed by an attempted dismissal. Oh, sure, there are atheists who are racist or sexist or whatever. I've heard I don't know how many people in the community say, but you can't let a few bad apples spoil the bushel.
That's what I tell myself whenever I watch your videos, Steve, or Christy Winter's videos. This is the problem. To me, you are the bad apple, but to you, it would be me. And that's why when you just throw around words like justice, then it has terrible connotations. As your justice would be all men basically being beta males.
They don't have muscles. They couldn't get any women's. Other people have had more success than me due to their confidence. I'm a beta male. Beta male. Beta male. Beta male. You are a cunt.
What? All white men that are prominent in the atheist community, should they step down to let women and black people and Asians come up into the ranks? I don't understand. It should be the person that can debunk religious arguments the best. They should be the leaders. I don't care about your race or sex. I really honestly don't.
Most atheists aren't like that. This apathetic, baseless optimism about the state of organized atheism is as corrosive as the problems it ignores, and rarely has it been on more conspicuous display than in the months surrounding Mythicist Milwaukee's Myth Information Conference last year. I've talked about MythCon in previous videos, so I won't go into any more detail here than absolutely necessary. If you want a more in-depth perspective of what MythCon was, why it was a problem, and why it was a problem that more people in the atheist community didn't have a problem with it, I recommend you check out the channel of my pal Chrisiosity. She recently produced 2 videos on the lead up to and fallout from MythCon.
So I'll be covering part 2 at some point, as I'm actually featured in it for about 10 to 15 seconds. Plus there's a lot that I want to refute, as I know a lot about MythCon just because I was covering it a lot when it was on. And Steve, I'm really glad I added the sad music to it, as you're acting like a plague has just hit the city and you have to rally the troops. Your moral lectures are hilarious because you are the person that blocks out all criticism of anything that happens to you. Plus, your conference that you were attending was a massive shit show. Didn't they say that George Clooney was attending at one point and they were trying to get other people to come with that information, Steve? But yeah, no one cares. You can hold your stupid conference, but stop lecturing everyone else when they want to hold something that you don't like.
They're both linked in the description of this video. They're excellent. I highly recommend them. When people like Christy Winters, Dan Errol, and myself began speaking out against the organizers of MythCon for choosing to associate themselves and their event with some of the most toxic voices in the atheist community, including several YouTubers who built their followings by promoting rape apology and inciting abuse and harassment against feminists and racial equality activists.
That sounds kind of dumb.
Steve, Christy Winters and her ilk contacted the location that was hosting MythCon and browbeat them into forcing MythCon to pay thousands of extra dollars for security fees. They also made one of the organizers' wife cry. And you're saying that Sargon, Shua, and Armored Skeptic are the toxic ones. You're saying our side are the toxic ones. No one harassed your atheist conference that just completely failed because you said George Clooney and other people were going to be there, which they obviously weren't. So, who's the toxic one here, Steve?
Activists, we were met not only by attacks from the people we were protesting, which was to be expected, but also by a worried disapproval from people we assumed would have been on our side of things. People who had presented themselves as progressive, tolerant, and socially conscious. What I realized as a result of the MythCon debacle, and what many people knew already, was that for a lot of folks, supporting equality and justice is about theory rather than practice. It's performative. It's about talking the talk, expressing disapproval of the right, wrong things. And it's almost always directed outward. Look over there, look at what those people are doing. Isn't that terrible? We atheists are accustomed to behaving this way.
Yes, it is fun debunking people that are outside your own group, but have you heard of the Kumite? As that is a blood sport live stream between creators, and a lot of the time it is atheist creators within the same group, I guess you could call it. So it's just the social justice warriors that can't handle critiquing their own side. It's not anyone else.
Many of us who came to the movement as a result of the popularity of new atheists like Dawkins and Hitchens first encountered skepticism in the form of a critique of religion, or a debunking of creationism, or a debate where our favorite atheist trounced some pompous apologist. It was about exposing how wrong they were and reveling in how right we were. We're good at that. We enjoy that. It makes us feel superior, whether or not we choose to characterize it that way. It's satisfying. It's comfortable. Maybe that's why, as eager as we are to direct our skepticism toward external targets, we're equally reluctant to turn it inward.
But you and Christy Winters and other of your ilk debunk Sargon and other atheists all the time, Steve. They're regulars on your channel, mate. Though, I've only seen you debunk someone on your side once, and that was when other male feminists were being incredibly creepy towards women. That's the only time. So maybe you should take your own advice and actually start critiquing your own side.
Because skeptically examining our own communities, our organizations, our heroes, ourselves, is not satisfying, at least not at first. And it's not comfortable. Pointing out the shortcomings of others is easy. Listening while others point out your shortcomings is hard. And harder still is taking it in, giving those criticisms a fair hearing, acknowledging those shortcomings. And hardest of all is taking that acknowledgement of your own shortcomings and translating it into productive action.
But you've also got to take note as to who is giving you the criticism. As if it's just some massive ideologue that believes white DNA is evil and that white men are the scourge of the earth that have just committed all atrocities. You're going to take it with a grain of salt, right, Steve? Plus, you block everyone, so I don't know why you are saying that other people should take criticism of their own position. If anyone ever gives you criticism, you just block them, or you block them before they can even give you criticism by block bots and blockchains. So doesn't this make you a massive hypocrite? I think it does.
Hardest of all is trying to change. It's not just the presence of racists, misogynists, sexual harassers, and other abusive or intolerant people that's the problem. It's the tolerance of their presence, and in some cases even the defense of their presence, by people who claim to be on the side of justice and equality.
There you go, guys. Justice and equality to a social justice warrior means banning people that they disagree with, that they deem are hateful. That's why when you say justice, Steve, it terrifies me. As I think you mean tyranny. I think you mean that you want to oppress these people. You want them to shut up because of their race and their sex. And that's just insane, Steve. Oh, but yeah, please lecture us more on how we need to listen. How we are not self-reflecting enough. Mr. Blockbot King.
It's the constant attempts to change the subject when the issues of abuse and harassment and intolerance within atheist circles are raised. It's referring to people who try to talk about these problems as divisive, or an outrage brigade, or fear pimps.
Fear pimps. I like that. That's quite good. But Steve, no one cares about the women, about the colored people. When it comes to atheism, it should be about the lack of a god. Whoever can show that the best should be the leader of the atheist movement. More black people, more women, doesn't mean that you'll be able to disprove any arguments. It's just irrelevant. And you're trying to bring all these issues into a group where they're not oppressing women. They just don't care about your feelings. They don't care if the leadership is all white, or black, or lizards, for God's sake. It's just the person with the best argument. That's why they call them the Four Horsemen. They are the four people that a lot of atheists believe can debunk Christianity and other religions the best.
It's a popular, respected voice within the community telling his audience, yes, these problems exist, yes, those people are bad, but this isn't really all that important, and I'm not going to do anything about it. And it's treating issues of importance to black atheists, trans atheists, atheist women as distractions or niche concerns, which only serves to reinforce a status quo where the voices of the marginalized are silenced or belittled with tokenism, while white cis-het men continue to dominate the discourse.
So there are now going to be four dicks in the room. What's up?
There's no one marginalized in the atheist community, Steve. But women and the colored people, which it's exactly the same thing. Colored people, people of color, you're both racist. You're just trying to group all non-white people under one little umbrella. Oh, look at the people of color. So what, are white people the people of no color? It's just so stupid. But Steve, I wouldn't care if a black atheist came up, put a good argument, and then became one of the new Four Horsemen. It would be irrelevant to me. But I don't want him getting to a prominent position purely because he's black, because then his argument's probably going to suck. And this is just trying to get feminism into another area. Via guilt, once again. Coming from a guy that shouldn't be lecturing anyone on morality. And I can't believe you said that other people should look inward and take criticism, when you will just block anyone with the slightest disagreement to your position.
The problem is so many of us atheists who fancy ourselves as open-minded, tolerant, progressive, socially conscious type guys fail to see, or are too cowardly to face, is that MythCon was not an aberration. The attitudes that created and sustained it and compelled people to defend it and make excuses for it are not rare in our community. They are pervasive. This state of affairs goes well beyond the atheist community, of course. One of the most difficult realizations I had to come to following the election of Donald Trump as President of the United States was that he was not an aberration either. He was not an alien. He was a product of our society. He was of us. To focus exclusively on him and not the factors that elevated him to the presidency would be to treat the symptom while ignoring the disease.
You are correct, Steve, but I don't think you have the ability to do that, as you have crossed the moral Rubicon. So I don't think you will ever have the ability to realize that you are in fact the problem. You and ilk like yourself created Trump. With your just denigration of white people, of their cultures, of their history, of the countries that they have created, that have allowed people that aren't white to come in and live freely, without discrimination. It's why Riley Dennis moving to Sydney, Australia just pisses me off so much, because he's just such a massive hypocrite. Why don't you actually live by your own ideals and go to one of these fantastic countries that you never bitch about, you never complain about, that are just apparently just bastions of freedom? Nope, you move to another Western country. Of course you do. It's just, you want it both ways, and it really, really pisses me off, Steve.
It's less daunting to regard people like Trump or events like MythCon as aberrations, because then the fix is relatively simple. Just win the next election. And that's if you decide that it's a problem even worth worrying about in the first place. Maybe you should just let them have their shitlord conference next time. I mean, what do you care? Sure, it was embarrassing when all those people applauded for the guy who publicly taunted a woman about her sexual assault, but don't blow it out of proportion. Don't you know that trying to stop intolerant people from spreading their intolerance makes you just as bad as they are? Sincere Carabo, the social justice coordinator at the American Humanist Association.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
I can work on myself and I can build myself up.
Wait a minute. There you go.
Social justice coordinator at the American Humanist Association. That doesn't sound purely terrifying now, does it? And see, right there, Steve. Oh, is trying to get intolerant people banned? That's not as bad as actually the intolerant people now, is it? You just claiming that their position is intolerant is disgusting. You're strawmanning these people. It's actually not intolerant, mate. Sargon doesn't want women raped. But he's saying I wouldn't even rape you is not a threat. You're so dishonest. Even there, see, that's so misleading.
Recently wrote about how common the attitudes of the organizers of MythCon and those who supported it are within atheist and secular humanist movement circles, and how the pervasiveness of these attitudes have caused him to disassociate with organized atheism. He writes, "It's too common to meet those involved in this movement who not only don't prioritize matters of social change for collective liberation, but also regard those who value these ambitions with contempt."
And if you just read the next paragraph, you understand this guy's position, this social justice coordinator. Those aren't my people, but more than that, they're obstacles to my work. I don't want to waste time and energy trying to convince people why they should examine their allegiances to unjust ideologies, or why they should act in solidarity with marginalized communities. So you just want a pure echo chamber, because it goes on to say he just wants to work with people who already understand what's going on. Which, if you continue to do that, your movement will shrink. As you should be wanting to convince other people of your position. And just claiming their unjust ideologies doesn't actually make them unjust ideologies. You're not proving anything.
He goes on to say, "Those aren't my people. They aren't my people either. I used to think they were, some of them at least. When we all stood together almost 6 years ago on the National Mall, I thought of all of them as my people. But I was wrong. And I'm glad I was wrong."
Well, I'm glad you finally realized it, Steve. Please create your own atheist movement. You can call it social justice warrior atheism or whatever. But stop trying to browbeat and guilt people into following your ideology instead of just convincing them with rational arguments. As this whole video is just, what, you're a white man? Step aside for this colored person as they take your position via racism, basically. You don't think that they can get there on their own merit, so you're letting them in because of their skin color. Fantastic. Oh, I'm sorry, you're pissed off, white guy. Well, you're an oppressor, so just, go sit in the back of the corner. That's your ideology, Steve. Do I have to link the Family Guy social justice warrior episode where Brian is just left in his house alone at the end? Ostracized from freaking society for a tweet? That's what you're advocating for.
People who applaud the denigration of women aren't my people. People who vilify and belittle people of color and activists who fight against racial injustice aren't my people. People who dehumanize and denigrate trans people aren't my people. People who engage in sexual harassment and abuse or defend those who do aren't my people.
Yes, but your people discriminate based on sex and race, Steve. You want a white person to step aside so a woman or a colored person can take their place based on arbitrary characteristics that they had no control over? You say the West is completely awful and that white people have committed just such atrocious crimes against the colored people and the women, and yet countries to this day are committing... Have you seen what North Korea is doing to its people, Steve? Did you see that story that Donald Trump told of that Asian man in which he was so hungry he passed out on a train track and his hand and his leg were crushed? And then he had to travel 1,000 miles to get to South Korea? Do you think that's comparable whatsoever, Steve? It's just shocking. And he's lecturing us once again. Steve, worst comes to worst, they're mean words. Go live in North Korea. Go live in the Middle East. Go live in China. Go live in India. You will find that these countries are not as free as the West. They don't treat minorities as well as the West does. It just pisses me off so much. And I bet you, Steve, if you moved, you would move to another Western country. Because of course you would. Of course you freaking would. It's just such an ungrateful prick.
And people who know that all of those things happen all the time in their own community and look the other way aren't my people either. I'm not the only one who feels this way. There are many people besides myself and Sincere who have largely or entirely disassociated from the movement as a result of these issues I've been talking about. Many who stood in the crowd or, in a few cases, on stage at the First Reason rally, but have now walked away from organized atheism. So who are my people? And if what I've spent this video complaining about is the problem, what is the solution? I strongly suspect I will find elements of both at a conference I'm attending in Washington, D.C. the first Saturday in April. I'm talking about Secular Social Justice 2018.
And to put a nail in the coffin of this train wreck of a video, Steve Shives is trying to guilt trip his audience into attending a secular social justice conference that he will be attending. I'll be covering it in another video as I want to go to the website, check out exactly what it's about, the speakers, so I can bring a more comprehensive view to you guys. I've got many projects in the work at the moment. I've got a Kingsman video that I've been working on for a while. That will probably take another couple of months, but yeah. Look forward to that. Documentary 2 is in the works. I'm trying to increase the production value on it at least 10 times of the first ones because I really want this one to be enjoyable for you guys. So I've got a feminist Flash video which will make you hate the Flash, at least for a little bit, as I can't believe they put out a video that social justice warrior girl or Supergirl, some episodes of that were better than this episode, which just, if you've actually watched any of Supergirl, you understand how much it hurts me to say that. I had my first Patreon live stream, which was really fun with Carrion Soul. If I'm doing another one in a couple of weeks, so you can please head over to Patreon and support me. I'm also going to set up MakerSupport and PayPal, so that's going to be done. And if you ever need to speak to me, please Discord, Twitter, Facebook. I'm on Discord a bit, so yeah, just come send me a message and we can have a chat. But anyway, thank you so much for watching, guys. And Steve, mate, you should just quit YouTube and go be a Shakespearean actor. There are a lot of beta male roles in Shakespeare that you could play. And I think you'd have a lot more fun than, yeah, just bitching at us and talking to animals.